Welcome to Health Oddity, the show that strips away the jargon and hype surrounding all things health and fitness to help you live a long, strong and energetic life. Lining up at the bar this week, here's Peter Lant, Paul Bassett and James St. Pierre.
Hello and welcome to Health Oddity. This is a very special episode. I know some of you have been with us since the start. Some of you may be just discovering our podcast. Either way, we thank you because this is a big moment for us. It's our 1 year anniversary, episode 52. So it makes us quite excited to kind of review the last 12 months and what's changed for us, what we've discovered, the kind of journey we've been on with the guests that we've had. And we'll get into that and exactly kind of what we have in future as well. This is exciting for us. So as per usual, please do like and subscribe this podcast. One thing we've learned is that the more people we have as part of our community, the bigger this show will become. So if you can just add us on iTunes, maybe post a review. We've got a group on Facebook. So if you go to the Health Oddity page, you can find the podcast, the group link there. And we're starting to grow members there slowly, but we're getting there. So we just got to remember to tell you about it. I think that's the main thing. So please do that. But otherwise, I'm here with the founders, the founding partners, the original, the OGs, what else is there for these things? I can't think of another kind of comparison, but the founding fathers of the Health Oddity podcast. Good afternoon. Is it afternoon for you? You're in Greece again. James is just taking it easy again. He's gallivanting around the world in Greece. How you doing, James?
I'm very good, thank you. Yeah, we're 2 hours ahead, so it's late afternoon. But fantastic. I'm really glad that I've managed to get on this with you guys. The Wi-Fi seems to be holding up. Everyone has turned off everything Wi-Fi related in the villa, so I am 100%. I have the Wi-Fi for the next 45 minutes, so hopefully it's going to be nice and smooth.
The children are bound and gagged in the corner. Yeah.
The children are in the pool. And they're out the way, yeah. And I'm rather glamorously locked in my in-laws' bedroom.
Very good. And what about you, Peter?
I could guarantee good Wi-Fi and quiet, so that's where I am.
Okay. Well, I don't know where that leaves you, Peter.
It's not as extravagant. I mean, I know we don't use this podcast to make any money or anything, right? We just do it for the fun of it. But James seems to be doing all right. He's turned into one of those people who's like, his Instagram will be him on a beach next, wouldn't it? Doing work from a lonely laptop.
I'm waiting for the YouTube advert that says if you're one of those guys working from a 9 to 5, what happens if you could earn £200,000 a year just working from the beach?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's it for you, James.
Well, if someone knows how to do that, they can tell me as well.
Right. Well, what are you up to?
As far as I'm concerned, that wouldn't be very fulfilling.
No, exactly. Be lonely.
Exactly.
Be lonely. Anyway, on that note.
Anyway, I'm rubbish in the sun.
You're going on holiday.
Well, yeah, but I'm going up to Hexham. It's not quite the same.
Well, I'm not on holiday. My kids are, and my wife. I am busy holding the fort with my business as everyone else goes on holiday. So I've got a little pity party here. Actually, I've got some freedom. I don't have kids around me. So it's another kind of holiday.
I was going to say it is a holiday. I was going to say I've got the world's smallest violin and all that, but that would be really nasty because your family's gone on holiday without you. So that's not very nice at all, is it?
I know.
Well, anyway.
Episode 52. Well, we do this quite frequently where we have a load of guests and then we have an opportunity to kind of recap, go through, our thoughts on those guests and maybe some of the subjects that they brought up, whether they're controversial or whether they're just something that piqued our interest, maybe we didn't know about and had us a sideways view. I mean, part of the reason we put this podcast together and the reason we called it Health Oddity is we wanted to find those different angles that maybe the mainstream media, maybe your magazines, typical kind of places that you consume your health and fitness advice. Not that they're not telling you about, it's just that it's not really a forum to just delve a bit deeper into these subjects. And we've got in the unique position to know a lot of people in the fitness industry, and we're discovering new people all the time who are really willing to just kind of share their experience, share their knowledge, and do it for free, do it for the love of it. And you can definitely tell that passion when we ever get any of these guests on. They are just willing to give all the way through. And for us as hosts, we get the opportunity to listen. And through the pandemic, I mean, we started this podcast as the end of the first lockdown. I mean, it's been a great way of just connecting with people in a world where it's been very difficult to actually meet people, very difficult to go to certifications and further education and things like that. But let's not forget that this isn't a podcast about trainers. This is a podcast about the average fitness enthusiast who, over the age of 30 upwards, we don't put an upper limit really on how old you can be and still be healthy. And really what we want to do is break things down so they're understandable. There's no secrets out there. There's no secrets, you see YouTube videos and they're talking about the secrets of the health industry. There's nothing secret about what we do. It's all about just exposing you to ideas that hopefully you'll be able to consume and make your own mind up if they're right for you, because we've changed our mind on quite a few things over the last year. But I suppose that's probably where I'm going to start, and I'll ask James, what's changed for you over the last year? I mean, what's the last 12 months delivered for you personally and professionally, and how did the podcast and the guests that we've had on influence that?
I think one of the big things that's been kind of universal, really, from all the guests that we've had on, or the vast majority of the guests that we've had on, is the idea of simplification and stripping away the unnecessary and trying to make things as easy as possible and as simple as possible. And I think that's probably, it's something that I've always read about, I've always known about, it's something I've always tried to do myself. But I think having it almost mentioned, on a weekly, or at least, a couple of times, 2-3 times a month for the last 12 months from all these really great people that we've had on, has really led me down the path of simplifying what I do even more, and aiming for even more simplification. So I think that's massive for me. I think even just the walking element that many people, I mean, obviously James Brees talks a lot about walking. A lot of people talked about rucking who we've had on. Mark Rifkind has talked about rucking. Dan Johns talked about rucking. This kind of lower intensity, consistent movement. I think for me as an individual, in my mid-40s with 2 kids, and the client base that I work with, who are predominantly over 50, I think that's probably had the biggest, like I say, it's not like it's the first time I've been introduced to the concept, but I think it's really that concept has really started to embed into me and my life and the way I do things now, far more than it has done in the past. And I do lend a lot of that, or I attribute a lot of that to the guests that we've had on and the way that we've been talking to people. Also, I think personally, I've really taken on board a lot more in terms of nutrition, my diet, particularly having read The Primal Blueprint by Mark Sissons, having had Brad Kearns on the podcast twice, having had Chris Lowe on the podcast, having had various people. Mike Sweeney was one of our first guests on the podcast. And I think I'd always kind of just drifted with nutrition and just kind of almost, because I could always kind of get away with almost eating and drinking what I wanted, I didn't really give it as much thought as I feel I do now. And I think given it a lot more thought and trying various things myself and experimenting with things, but generally doing some key principled things, I feel so much better. So I think that in the last 12 months, and certainly in the last 6 months, that's been a big thing for me as well.
How about you, Peter?
Yeah, I mean, similar to James with me, it's the simplicity of stuff. And I've said it before in lots of these podcasts, is like, I've got the simplest life possible for me, which wasn't always the case. And it just keeps drilling it home that is, it's the easiest way or the simplest way is the easiest way to stick to. So based on kind of you guys who'll be listening to this, you know, and we've talked about like where to start and all of that. That was the very first podcast. And it's very hard because, you know, there's all these things out there to see. You need to set these goals, and you need to have like your short-term goals and your long, and it all becomes really complicated. So you need to have your short-term goals and long-term goals for what you want your fitness to look like. And that'll have to have some element of nutrition involved as well. And then you've got to have a plan to get to that. And and all of a sudden it's like work. It's like another job, right? And everyone's got a job that they're getting on with, right? Which is the reason why they haven't got time to do this stuff or even think about it. So for me, it's the whole thing of pretty much like what James just said. What's the simplest thing you can do right now to get started? And then, you know, and then we've talked about the James Clear book, the Atomic Habits book and all that, and just starting to build on that. Start small and then build upon that. And that's been huge for me. And I mean, I've always done that, but I was kind of on a plateau, and I had been for ages, just like simple training, but the same sort of thing over and over and over and over and over again. And I was getting a little bit bored with it. So then after we had Paul McElroy on, I talked to him after we recorded that show. He'd already contacted me anyway, because he'd seen me on Instagram, and he was like, you know, do you fancy working together? So I stayed on with him after that show, and so he's been coaching me since January, and I've just been seeing progress after progress after progress, and it's still been extremely simple, but it's just made me get like, I get up in the morning and I'm like, right, I know exactly what I'm doing today, and I know that he knows what he's talking about, and I know that it's going to take me forwards. So, yeah. So keep basically just pretty much what everyone said, keeping it simple. You know, Dan John talks about that a lot. Mark Rifkin talked about that, about rucking, walking, just doing the simple things to consistently. You know, and then we had Stu McGill on last week, didn't we? Who was talking about, you know, you can have these lofty goals to go and lift heavy stuff, but you're going to have to pay the price for that in the future. It's a kind of a trade-off between whether you want to be the rocking granddad, like you said, or you want to lift this big weight now. So it makes me think a lot, especially with the guys we've had on who've been older. So Brad Kearns is like 10 years, 15 years older than us, and then, you know, so Stu and Dan and Mark Rifkin are like 20 years older than us. And seeing them, you can kind of see into the future, can't you? And see, like, that's what it looks like if you do it right. So, yeah, that's what I get out of it. Just keeping it simple and just keeping the goal kind of, well, what, like Dan John says, I keep the goal, but keeping the goal with a view of 20 years in the future and what that will look like and what it will do for that. So that's me. What about you, Paul?
Certainly after the first lockdown, it was quite a stressful time. And one thing you kind of lose, well, certainly I was getting to a point in my business where I was feeling like I had some freedoms. And then obviously, I mean, I'm sure like you guys, everything gets shut down and everything changes overnight, and you become extremely focused on survival. And so coming out of that lockdown, having an opportunity to be creative was massive for me. And we'd all spoken and we'd been in contact for years. And so the opportunity for us to chat and be creative. And, you know, I've always learned quite well by firstly visualization of things, you know, rehearsing things in my mind, but also conversations. You know, some people do really well writing things down and taking notes. For me, I'd rather listen and try and store it and then rehearse it, talk about it. And that's what this has really given me, is this opportunity to talk about ideas and solidify things and put stuff out there, with the idea that perhaps it might be rejected. Maybe it's slightly off kilter. And, you know, a lot of these guests that we've got on, I mean, we got to a point after a few months where we were like, okay, let's get some guests on. To expand that conversation. And a lot of these people I'd seen from afar. I'd either learned from them or I'd read their books and things like that. So, when you're reading a book, you have questions in your head and you can't ask the author. Maybe they've addressed it in the book, but sometimes not. And so it's great to finally meet people like Dan John, and and obviously I use Paul McElroy as a coach myself, and I've used his system at my gym. And I think people like Brad Kearns, pivotal podcast with him and Mark Sisson in my development around kind of well-being. So meeting these people who can, they're also articulate around their subjects, and it's kind of aspirational for me to learn how to express some of these complex ideas, because most of our clients, they don't need complex explanations. They need like the shortest route from A to B. I think in the Dan John podcast, he's talking about queuing. And he's like, I just use one word: type, tool, hinge, whatever it is. What is the shortest route from A to B? And I like that, not because I'm ADHD or anything. It's just that there is beauty in simplicity, and it's really, to the wealth of guests, there are commonalities, and it's interesting seeing how someone takes the same subject and looks at it from a slightly different angle. I think, was it Diane Udale was talking about mental health in that way? Have you seen your mental well-being from this angle? What about this other angle? And therefore you can get a more expansive and complete idea of where you're at. And look, it's been up and down. So this has been a constant for me. It's been like something I clock into every Thursday. We do it. Or, sometimes there's deviations, but generally it's every Thursday. We know what we're doing. We're reaching out to people. It's a creative element to my week. And it's exciting talking to you guys. We've always got things to talk about. So so go on.
I was just going to say, I think going back even the early ones, when we had Rick Brown on, didn't we, Mr. Maceman? And I think he was our first sort of international guest, and that was probably going back 10 months or 9 months now or something like that. Yeah. And I think what I've really taken from, I suppose, and Brett Jones talked about this a lot as well, and have many of our guests, is there's what did Brett say? Something like, all roads lead to Rome, or there's more than one way to skin a cat, and there's all these different tools out there. And Mr. Maceman is obviously, he uses the mace, and other people use the kettlebell, and other people use body weight, and other people use barbell. And I think it's just all of these things work. And it's just a case of, picking one or picking an approach for a time and sticking with it, isn't it? This is a big thing that a lot of the guests have talked about, this kind of shiny object syndrome, or you start a program that's meant to be a 4-week program or a 6-week program or an 8-week program. And, 2 weeks into it, you get distracted by something else, which is the next big program or the next new piece of equipment or whatever. So I think it's actually having the courage and having the discipline to find something and to stick with it. And I know that both of you have been training with Paul McElroy, and I know that you've mentioned before, Pete, about, you do the same, say 9 exercises per week, 3 exercises per workout or something like that. It's just having the discipline and the courage to stick with something and follow the plan, isn't it? And I know that I'm sure all of us as business owners meet lots of people who say, well, I've tried this, it didn't work. 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 And most of the time they've probably tried it for, 2 or 3 weeks, then jumped onto the next thing and tried that for 2 or 3 weeks and jumped onto the next thing. And
but why is that, do you think?
Something.
Why do you think people have that mindset?
It, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, it's a big one. I think we've spoken about it before, about the, the kind of the modern day sort of phenomena of you order something on Amazon at 5 p.m. it's at your door at 9 a.m. the next morning. This kind of this want for immediate results. And I can't remember who it was. Someone said, I think it may have been Franz Schneidman when we spoke to him, but you didn't get here you didn't get to where you are in 5 minutes. It's taken you 20 years to get to where you are. You're not going to get out in 5 minutes or 2 or 6 weeks. It's going to take time. And I think, it's people have this expectation of and it's probably to do with sales and marketing and what's shown on the magazines and the TV. But people think that the results are going to be far quicker than they will be. And I think that's why probably people program hop or gym hop or diet hop or, whatever. I don't know what do you guys think about that?
I read something interesting the other day. In fact, I heard it on another podcast, the Modern Wisdom podcast that I listen to, which I really love. But which I didn't realize actually, Stu McGill and Brett Jones have both been on that. I'd listened to it, but
yes, they have.
I didn't realize it was that podcast at the time because it was when he just started out. But anyway, so like you say, people program hop and they'll say, "Oh, everyone on Instagram says this. Everyone on Instagram says this is great." There's the 90-9-1 principle apparently. And it's something like, I'm not sure what the percentage of the population is actually on social media, but it's not as many as you think. It's like 20% or something like that, or actually on social media. Of those people who are on social media, which isn't as many as you think, 90% of those people don't post anything. They just lurk and watch, right? 9% of those people, of that 20%, 9% post here and there, and then 1% post like every day, or 1% are like 99% of all posts, and of that, it's something like only 1% of that 1% are like that the people who really like slam the posts out and put loads out. So when people say everyone on social media is saying something, it's nobody. It's nobody really. So because all the other people are just getting on with life and doing what they want. So when you've said stuff like that, when you've said people jump from here to there to here to there, it's because they've been told this is the best thing, this is the best thing, this is the best thing, right? We've been told by Steve Maxwell that kettlebells aren't good for you and you shouldn't use them, right? Which I don't agree with, and I don't think any of us agree with. But that's fine, right? That's his opinion. But the funny thing is with that, I've deviated from kettlebells a lot. I've been using them for years now, about 10 years, but I've deviated from them quite a lot because I'm like, okay, I've been using them. Is there another way? Of course there's another way. I'll go and use the barbell. So I've done that and I've deviated, but I've not enjoyed it as much. And I've got progress out of it, but it just feels like it's not been as, I don't know, it's not been as rewarding for me. And also it means I have to go to a gym to do it. So I have to have a membership and I have to be there at a certain time and all of that. Whereas the bells
I was just going to say, Pete, the thing with you though, when you did have your period of doing the barbell stuff for the SFL, you followed the program and you stuck with it and you gave it a really good go, didn't you? It wasn't a 2-week little affair with the barbell, then you gave up and came back. You had a program that you worked on through Plan Strong, I think, and you properly followed that. So you
did it for 3 years.
You deep dived into the barbell. It wasn't like I'll go and do 3 weeks of 3 weeks of deadlifts and then no, that's not for me. You properly you deep dived into it, and then you've made the decision based on finishing the program and as Dan John says, plan the hunt, and then discuss the hunt. You did it all, and then you've made an informed decision on the back of that.
It's funny because when Stu McGill was talking about this stuff as well, it's exactly how I felt. So I was doing basically deadlifts, back squats, bench press for 3 years, which a lot of people will say that's nothing. You need to do 20 years and then you might know what you're talking about. And I get that. That's fine. But
I think probably 3 years is enough.
But 3, it's a decent amount of time. And I'm, and I dabbled with barbells and stuff before as well. But I was like, right, I'm going into it. I'm doing the SFL. I'm going at it. But in line with what Stu McGill said, I started to feel tight. I started to kind of lose mobility and feel like I needed to keep on top of my mobility even more. I don't do that much mobility these days because the stuff I do with the bells puts you in the position to be in, it gives you it helps you with that mobility. Whereas
you're not training to injury. You're not kind of like, because sometimes if you have that random training approach, you just get random injuries.
Exactly. And I put a post out about this last week, actually, about, people being average and all that sort of stuff. And I was like, if your average guy can be someone who does pistol squats in the living room with a 24 kilo bell, doesn't have any joint pain at 45, I'd love to live in a world where that was your average person. It would be brilliant. But unfortunately, we're not, because your average person has probably got some pain somewhere from doing something, or from sitting down all day and works in an office and doesn't get out enough and hasn't got enough time.
So we're actually superheroes.
I wouldn't go that far.
Well, we've got to mention a superhero on one of these episodes.
Well, absolutely, but you've got to be. But this is the thing: you've got to be the example, haven't you? You've got to be able. You've got to. We've spoke about this as well. You know, you can't just sit there talking about it. You've got to do it. You've got to show people that. I mean, James does his the Strong You project, don't you? And that's kind of like guiding people through the principles of just how to fit all this stuff into your life. I mean,
I think it's interesting because I read a lot of self-help books, or like just kind of, not mindfulness, that all sounds, that's the kind of category they stick it in, but coaching books about how do you become more effective. And there's like classic things like the Stephen Covey 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And like one of those things he talks about is the move from being guided by principles to being seeking techniques. And I think what I've enjoyed of meeting all our guests is they have such differing techniques, but they're guided by principles. Yeah. And across the board, there's a consistency in their approach. I mean, you could probably boil every single one of our guests' coaching principles down to very similar things, but they express them in different ways, whether it's like Franz Sneidman, who's doing sprinting, explosive work. But the guiding principles to get someone to sprint are the same as probably Khalil Hussein, who does the FRC, who's a chiropractor, or Paul McElroy, something like that. They're trying to think about how do they simplify things, how do they make things easy for someone to consume, and how they keep people away from injury, how do they train someone for the right age category they're in, but also listen to them. Because it's quite easy to say, I've got a solution and blah, 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 blah. In the meantime, your client hasn't even uttered a word. And getting to know them is really important.
Here's the thing, using you as an example. So Paul trains me and you, right? And he posts stuff on social media of look what my clients can do, right? And there's some bonkers stuff.
I've not been posted yet.
Neither have I, right? But there's a reason for that, right?
It's because I always gurn. I'm not photogenic.
But the thing with it is, right, so he's posting people doing bonkers stuff, right? And that's great, right? But this goes along with what Perry Nicholson said. When someone comes to him, he looks at the individual, he looks at the person. He's not saying, I've got this thing that'll help you, because he doesn't know what you need help with yet. Yeah, he hasn't spoken to you. So when someone comes into him, he's like, what do you need? What do you need from me? And then I'll decide whether I can help you or not. And then he looks at the person. And then he might be able to help them. He might not be able to. So Paul's very similar to that, right? Because, you can look at Paul's stuff and he gives us loads of volume to do. And you might say, well, that's just setting you up for injury. And it's like, no, he doesn't give you any more than you should be doing or you can do. And you said, Paul, that you were doing some stuff in the program and you were getting sore elbows and, you were starting to get joints and a bit of tendonitis and stuff. So you spoke to him about it and you changed it up and you did different stuff. And
I mean, one of the big things, I've been working with Paul. I mean, I think I've certainly challenged him at times because one thing I always struggle with is it's the kind of 40-year-old man plus with kids syndrome. Some people deal with it better. For me, I have very long hours, split shifts. My nutrition's pretty good. I've worked with Chris Lowe, so I have addressed it. But recovery, and sometimes the program and what it intends for me versus actually how I've slept and stuff like that is outstripped, and occasionally, and that's where a good coach comes in. He's not as caring as me for my client. He tells me to man up at times, and I've kind of needed that, because when you've trained yourself, you can be a bit easy on yourself. And I actually think sometimes it takes someone to say, no. If you do this, you can push yourself and you can actually achieve a lot. And I had a major blockage on my concept of being strong. Major blockage. I've never struggled with endurance at all. If someone says go and run a marathon, I don't want to do it. But I know I could train for it quite quickly and do it. but with strength, it was a major blockage. And really working with Paul, I had a lot of self-doubt. And I really think that comes down to coaches. You know, we come in with so much kind of like, I didn't come in with a fully made kind of like person ready to be the perfect coach. I came in with a lot of anxiety around things and self-doubt. And working with Paul and being around people like yourselves and talking to other people kind of says, okay, this is not crazy thinking. This is what a lot of people experience. And maybe I'm just, I need to be a bit kind to myself, or look at it from a different angle, and I could do something differently and get a different result.
What about you, James? Because you've got a bit of this at the minute, haven't you? Because you're doing because we're doing the body weight at your place in September, and you're working on the one-arm, one-legged push-up and the pistol, and you're not quite there yet, are you? So how are you managing that? How are you managing that? I mean, obviously I think you've been coached by Claire on it, aren't you? But
yeah,
how are you managing your mindset around that?
Well, I'm trying to. I need to, like anyone. I think, left to my own devices and without a direction and without any external pressure, I think most people will revert to doing what they feel comfortable with and what they're pretty good at already. And that's just kind of, and that is true for anyone, and it's true for me as well to an extent. So I don't mind pushing myself, but I prefer to push myself at things that I know I can do, but gradually you're kind of, Paul talks a lot about the comfort zone expanding, and Paul McElroy again. And I feel that now, you look back at certain things. I was doing some trainings. I've got to recertify my SFG as well at the SFB in September. And I remember writing down a goal once that said I wanted to be able to snatch the 24 kilo kettlebell, 10 times on each hand, just one set of 10 on each side. And then now it's, well, okay, you've got to do the snatch test in next month. And I'm pretty confident that, I did some just before going away. So I know, so you do expand, so I can do that. But certainly with the one arm, one leg press up, I can do the one arm press up now. I've just got to lift the leg off the floor, which sounds,
that's tough. It's tough to balance,
Yeah. So I'm doing it. I can do it on quite a low bench now, a low step, with one leg off. The pistol and pull-ups I'm fine with. I can do lots of pull-ups. I think it's the pistol squat is the thing that I really need to work on. It's funny, actually. We were at a
by the way, I envy your pull-ups. You're so good at pull-ups. And Peter, you're getting good at those as well. I tried to make an excuse to Paul McElroy. I said, my arms are too long. And he said, well, some of the best pullers I know have long arms. So I had to be quiet. So then I decided that the air was too thick because I live in London and there's smog. That didn't work as well. But yeah, I envy your pull-ups, James.
No, but again, pull-ups is something that I've built up to. But now I can say I'm not worried about them. I know I can do them. But the pistol squat is the one thing, and I'm hoping that that if Pete does get down for the Dan John thing, that we can spend half an hour with me or something doing some bits, because the pistols. But I was just going to say, it was quite funny. I've been at a water park today with the kids. And I found the kind of nice bit of water where in the pool, which was about waist height. And I was doing pistol squats in the water about waist height. So I had the buoyancy. So I was but what was really quite interesting was I was really having to sort of pull myself down into the pistol squat to fight the buoyancy, And then the buoyancy was obviously helping me on the way up, but I was getting into a nice bottom position. But yeah, it's just, that's something that I just want
to say something quickly, James. That is why you are good at what you do, not because of that specific thing, but you're not binary. You see, a lot of people don't see the results they want because they're binary. They're either training or they're doing sod all. Well, you're going, this is an opportunity to play. Oh, I'm in the pool. I'll do this. Or I'm like you, Peter. Whenever you see a log or a rock, you're doing a one-leg pistol, a pistol squat. You're finding opportunities to do things. When I'm walking the kids, I'm thinking, can I pick a log up and throw it?
That's just to look good on Instagram, though. It's not.
I know.
Anything special.
You could have just done it with your bikini.
with what James has just said there, and what you've just said, Paul, as well, was about, you could train to run a marathon like in a couple of weeks, right? I couldn't. Strength is your problem. I've not always been strong. I'm probably like, you can argue whether I'm strong now or not, depending on whatever. But
you're really good at pressing.
Well, yeah, but strength wasn't always there for me. But I'm more comfortable with strength now than any endurance. Give us endurance, and I'll
You just walked 100 miles.
Well, no, yeah, walking's easy.
That is endurance, isn't it?
Well, okay, but I mean, like, yeah, but okay, well, all right, but anyway, I find that not easy. But if you ask me to run a marathon, I'd hate it. I just no chance, right? But James just said something about pistols there, and even the one-legged press up. And you've got really long legs, haven't you? Basically, so
that'll be my excuse.
This is one of the things. It makes it harder, right? Paul McElroy talks about this with pressing. He's got monkey arms, hasn't he? So for him, pressing is really hard, but he can still do it because he's some sort of genetic freak. But
I think he doesn't feel pain or discomfort or anything.
Yeah, there's something weird going on there. But he's I hope he doesn't mind. I don't think he mind me saying that, but he is he's a strength freak, isn't he? But anyway, but we're talking about this a lot. We're talking about in the SFL and stuff like that. Some people, you look at powerlifters, right? They're all about 5 foot and as wide as they are tall, right? They're not like, they're not like your basketball player and all that. So this is another thing about people who jump in between programs and go, oh, my mate's doing this, you're doing that, you're doing that. It depends on limb lengths and all sorts of stuff. Mark Rifkin talked about if he does double-handed kettlebell swings, he gets a sore back. But if he does single arm, he doesn't. And you'd think that would be the other way around. But, it's just one of those things. So when people are like, I really want to be able to do a pistol squat, and I want to be able to do a pistol squat with a heavy weight and all that, it's like, you might not be able to. But the likelihood is the person who can do that won't be able to do something that you can do. So it's one of those things with what James just said, working on the things that you're comfortable with, right, is fine. But if there's other stuff you can add to that, that's great. But if it's stuff that you've just got no chance of being any good at because of your the makeup of your body, it might be some sort of goal that you're pursuing forever. Like with deadlifts with me, right? I probably could get way better at them, but it just feels like it's a very long process to add a very small amount. I mean, my approach might be wrong, but
I don't do them at the moment. I like them, but I don't do them.
Exactly, and and you don't necessarily have to. So
I think whereas what we're talking about now as well is something that's like the question you asked, Pete, or I think it might have been Paul who asked it originally. I think when I do get a pistol squat, it will be very, very rewarding, and I'll know that it's taken me a long time, and it's something that I'm not. Because they talk about people talk about people who you show them a pistol squat and then without any training at all they'll go, oh, you mean this, and they can just do it, and some people can without and I know so I think when I do eventually get it, it'll be very, very rewarding. And this is something that I try and get across to my members, and it kind of comes back to one of the things we were talking about earlier about people expecting results and expecting things to happen overnight or expecting to be good at something straight away. In many ways, I think that, the journey and the struggle and the kind of the toil that it takes to actually get there is what's character building and is what training's all about, isn't it? If we were all good at everything the first time we tried to do it, or we were all very, very strong, or we could all just pick up something and do it straight away, there's no reward there, is there? There's no growth, I suppose. There's no development, which is what I think a lot of people, and I think that's why the three of us are in this industry and do what we do.
Yeah,
Sorry, go on.
There was something I was reading a while ago, and it was about people who are fast learners. Some people are fast learners and they get concepts and things and things like like you say, pistols and stuff like that, but not necessarily just in training, like in anything, and they pick things up really quickly. But the problem you get with that is they miss out on all the basics. So at some point in the future, if you learn something very, very quickly, you're going to get to a point where you get stuck because you haven't got the basics that someone who learned this over a number of years has got to, and then they go, I know how to get past that blockage that you're at right now.
It also creates a mindset to get across it, doesn't it?
Exactly. And it's like, you don't know how to
it's that kind of the fundamentals
all that working.
Yeah, the kind of the fundamentals that underpin it all. If you just can pick it up and just do it straight away, you're missing all of that. I suppose you're missing all of that understanding, really, aren't you? Underneath, that understanding of, and certainly if it comes to coaching someone else, which is, we've spoke about this a number of times, where actually when I eventually get a pistol squat, and it's taken me a long time and a bit of a struggle to get there, it's going to make me a better coach at trying to talk someone else and help someone else through it, because most of my members won't be able to do something straight away. And if you can actually say, well, look, actually, this took me, a year to be able to do this, and so I can actually recognize the frustration and see the problems and all the rest of it. So I think
you will lose you will lose the ability eventually, but what's going to stay is what you developed to get it originally. The mindset, the coaching cues, the experience. Because great if you can do a one leg squat at 80, whether it's necessary, I don't know. If you can, that's great, but you can apply that to other areas that are a challenge at that point. I mean, we got our first troll, didn't we, on one of our YouTube videos, was just saying, oh, so I should take advice from these average guys. And
average out of shape guys.
Oh, yes, exactly. Yes. I mean, like you say, we're not elite athletes, and that's not what we came in for this. And it's not an excuse, but what we do is none of it really came that easy, I don't think. But what did come easy was the passion for it. And I think that's what we hope to be able to kind of give to people, is the fact that, these things are tough, amount of joint injuries I've had over the years, amount of stuff I have to undo in order to even do basic things sometimes. But I've never lost my passion, because I see constant progress. And I think that's what I get from this. I mean, before we kind of wrap up though, I wanted to go through if we look back at some of the podcasts, which ones you guys enjoyed, and why. So James, which ones stand out for you?
Gosh, that's a really hard question, because I think I've got something from all of them. All the guests that we've had on, I've got something from all of them. I really do. One thing that was really interesting, I'll just give a quick shout out to, there's Paul Field, who's a listener, who's listened to every single one of our podcasts, who's a member of mine. And he said something the other day, which was really good. He said, he actually recommended, I haven't done it yet, but he said, go back and listen to your first podcast, the very first one we did, because he listened to that again recently. And he said, and I said, oh, did it sound awful? He said, actually, no, it didn't. It didn't sound much different from the ones you're doing now.
They're all rubbish.
They're all rubbish. But what he said was, you laid out in the first one, kind of, you set your stall out in the first one, what you wanted Health Oddity to be about. And this was only last week he said this to me. And he said, and I think you've actually done a really, really good job of actually walking the path that you kind of spoke about in episode 1. So maybe, I'll definitely go back and listen to that. I think in terms of guests who've stood up, I've got a lot of, obviously, time for Dan. Dan's been on 4 times now. Brad Kearns was fantastic, being on twice. I think Finn Bartoulan was fantastic as well. Tracy Rifkin. I mean, it's difficult to say, Mark Rifkin, I think I've got something from everyone. And I think that's what's so great. Sometimes we've had guests on that I've not known beforehand, because maybe either Paul, you've invited them on, or Pete, you've invited them on. And I think just the act of having a conversation with someone for an hour or around an hour, around health and fitness and exercise and training and rehab and nutrition, and seeing things from their point of view. I mean, this has been a really, really valuable year for me. And I think it's, and I hope it has been for the listeners as well,
Peter?
That's my way of kind of, ducking the question.
Right. Well, now what James has just said there, actually, when you said your guy Paul is, I'll go back and listen to that actually. But we had the conversation before that first episode, didn't we? We'd been talking for a little while before that. And the reason why I think it's gone in the direction we wanted it to is because we've been doing it for years beforehand anyway. And then we just said, like, let's just start talking about it. So it's actually already there and already ingrained. And we already like kind of half knew some of the people who were coming on. So so that's why it's gone in that direction, I think, because we already knew which way we wanted it to go. So it's good to hear that, though. I really like to hear that. So I'm going to go back and listen to that, I think.
I would as well.
But in terms of people who
How
have
about
had
yourself,
on, I mean,
Paul? Sorry.
my favorite episodes, the one we did with Mark Rifkind, I loved that.
It was a good one.
I loved that. And the one with Stu McGill, last week's one, I mean, like listening to Stu, because what he said will affect so many people. I know, like, you know, we've spoke like about Dan John and then there's Brett Jones and all that, and like all these people that we had Paul Gray on as well, you know, who like about the kind of training that they do and how it helps people increase that buffer for the future, for if you get ill and stuff like that, and it gives you a better chance of recovery and all of this stuff. And that's great. But I think the stuff that Stu talks about will affect, especially in like now with people sitting down more and all of that, it'll just affect everybody. Which is why, you know, I just love listening to him. I've listened to him on lots of other podcasts, and I just love it. But also talking to Brad Kearns, I didn't know who he was before Paul brought him on the podcast. So I've been listening to the Brad Kearns podcast. You know, so it's just been really interesting to talk to people who I didn't know about. You know, and get their kind of, because Brad's kind of outlook on stuff is totally different to what I would usually have looked at. So it's just been really good to hear that. And we're getting him back on as well, I think, aren't we? So that'll be good.
Yeah. Probably.
And how about you, Paul? Yeah.
Really enjoyed some of them were unexpected, you know, like Maggie Elliott. She was great. Really, that was a really fun one. You know, I thought she was great, and exactly what our listeners would have wanted. For me, I had no idea who she was and never met her before, and I found her really kind of great to talk to. Obviously, you know, Brad Kearns was great as well, you know, for me, it's just the who's who of kind of the people I've always wanted to speak to. You know, Dan John was obviously a big guest for us to get on, and Paul McElroy as well. And you could pick these people's minds. It's just been fascinating speaking to these people, and you know, I've always enjoyed our chats with each other, actually. You know, because you know, you guys are really articulate. You know, you should be podcasts on someone else's. You should be guests on someone else's podcast, because you know, you guys know equally as much as some of our guests. You know, I know some of them are older or whatever, but you know a lot, so it's always good for me. So you know, you should also all listen to my podcast. I don't know what episode it is. But, I don't know. I'll probably find it for you if you're going to push me, guys. No, it's no, but yeah, no, it's great. So I mean, and I suppose that brings me to the next part, which is, you know, we've got some great guests lined up for the next part of the year. You know, we've got Phil Maffetone, major one for me. Feels like pivotal in my health journey. Pivotal. We have Paul McElroy returning. We have Brad returning. And we've reached out to some other guests as well. And we're just confirming them. So it's the rest of the year is going to be awesome. And I think, you know, I'm excited to know who we're going to meet in future.
No, it's been a brilliant year, and I certainly you know, exceeded all expectations that I had when we first sat down, the three of us, and did that episode 1 year ago. You know, so you know, the way this has gone and the way it's taken off. As I said, I think in another post I said it was almost like a lockdown project, you know, to begin with, and it's just gone on to be incredible. So thank you to both of you guys as well for it really does help, actually. And again, it's all down to accountability with training as well, isn't it? Having three of us doing this every week, It really does help keep us all on track. It helps us, you know, right, where's the next guest? Who's the next guest? How are we going to, you know, I think we work well together, and long may it continue.
Indeed. Well, I suppose that brings us to the end of the podcast. As is ever, as I said at the beginning, please do share this podcast, with someone perhaps who needs a bit of advice. We've got loads of different episodes, where to start might be the best one to go for, because someone might not know what to do at all. And there's obviously with people who are experts in their disciplines. And so if you have a friend who's into endurance, you've got to check out the Brad Kern one. If you want someone who's addicted to strength training, you've got to check out the Paul McElroy one or the Dan John one. So there's something there. There's nutrition episodes which help provide clarity, like Josh Hillis. So we've got great guests coming up over the next couple of months. We're excited that you're all part of the journey. Please do review this podcast, because we will grow and we'll be able to reach more people. And if you're part of the Health Oddity group, you can also suggest guests and ask questions, because we've had Chris Denning as well, who's been a real supporter of the podcast right from the beginning. And he was one of our guests on the show. So it's not that you're guaranteed to get on the show if you post a question, but it is that, we are interested to find out what makes people succeed. And Chris has succeeded in his own health journey. And that really is the message. James, anything to leave the avid listener, the what are they called? The lovely listener. Anything to leave them with?
Yeah, no, just thank you to the listeners. I mean, last month, July, was our most successful month, in terms of downloads and numbers of people listening to the show. So I just want to thank the listeners. I know lots of you have listened to every single episode, which is great. Like Paul just said, if you haven't yet, or if you're new to the podcast, I'd really recommend going back and listening to them in order, because there's something in there, and there is a method behind the madness. There's some sort of sequential stuff going on there, and we reference other podcasts that we've done. So if you haven't gone right back to the start, I'd really recommend you do that. But thank you so much for listening, and look forward to doing this for a lot longer.
Yeah. Any final thoughts there, Peter?
Well, we forgot to mention Jim Hatcher for one.
Oh, that was a good one.
We've got to mention Jim, because he's asked a lot of questions. He was on the podcast as well. He'll come back on as well. I know he will, and he's been a huge supporter of ours as well.
Yeah.
And he's 79 now. He's years old. So he's perfect. And then we've also got hopefully a guest lined up in a similar vein. I'll not say any more, but hopefully who we've reached out to. So that'll be another great person who's of a certain age who's done really well. So yeah. And James said, there's some people who haven't listened to all the podcasts, and he forgot to say, if that's you, shame on you, and go back and listen to them.
Shame is the best way to get people to do things. Right. Well, on that message, like The Handmaid's Tale. Yeah. Yes. So, look, thanks a lot, guys. Who we got on next week? I don't know who we got on next week. I think
we don't know.
Whoever we've got, they'll be great. Well, we've actually got more professional over the last year, but look, subscribe. Hope to have you on the journey for much longer, guys. Please share the podcast, and we'll see you very soon for the next episode.
You've been listening to Health Odyssey with Peter Lant, Paul Bassett, and James St. Pierre. To get your regular fix of hype-free health, you can subscribe and leave a review wherever you get your favorite podcasts. You can find out more on today's and other topics at healthodyssey.com, or find us on Facebook or Instagram by searching for Health Oddity.